Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Luminaries, a podcast of Rose and Associates. And this is a quarterly podcast that we have inspired conversation with real estate investment and economic development leaders throughout the Carolinas. And we're exceptionally honored today to interview and have a discussion with my dear friend and colleague, Arthur Samet from the Samet Corporation. And we were laughing about how long we've known each other, and I think it's going on close to 30 years at this point. So when I first came to the Carolinas back in '99, I was actually here before that teaching for the CCIM Institute and got to meet Arthur. And we've known each other and stayed in touch ever since. So a little bit about Arthur Samet. I'm going to read from a little bit of his bio. And his bio says you might say construction courses through his veins. And I would say that we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I think real estate and construction and development is kind of part of the DNA with most folks. And as CEO, Arthur's been CEO since 2000, and he took the baton from his father, who was the founder of Samet Corporation, Norman Samet, and he has successfully grown this company into what it is today, which is one of the leading construction companies in the Carolinas, if not the Southeast. He started in the field and worked his way up through the business, through the ranks. And he also has an entrepreneurial mindset. So in addition to his work with Samet Corporation, Arthur has also been very entrepreneurial and had some complementary businesses like Samet Real Estate and Development, Comet Building and Development, which is a multifamily housing company, WxProofing, and WxTite. Tite?
Yep.
Okay. So, all construction related. Arthur's a proud Georgia Bulldog and earned his undergraduate degree from the University of Georgia and has an
Dogs.
MBA. Huh?
Go Dogs.
Yeah, okay. And then, yeah, they're in the news lately too, right? And an MBA from the University of North Carolina's Kenan-Flagler School of Business. So lifelong learning. Arthur also currently sits and previously sat on several board and professional appointments, both in the construction industry, in real estate, including Cone Health Board of Trustees, Triad Business Bank, Piedmont Triad Partnership, the UNC Childress Klein Center, UNC Chapel Hill Board of Visitors. Pretty deeply embedded in the academic world at UNC and some of the other local universities like High Point, on the North Carolina Economic Development Board. We knew each other from the CCIM days when he was a board chair and education chair of the chapter, NAIOP, Realtors Association. So lots of threads in the real estate and construction industry and universities and some of the areas you're involved with. So most notably, Arthur was honored in 2022 as the Business North Carolina CEO of the Year. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So you have built a company now since you took it over from your dad in 2000 of 6 offices across the Southeast, 3 or 4 in the Carolinas, 1 in Georgia, 1 in South Carolina. I forgot the number, a couple hundred employees. So
About
tell us,
500.
is it what it is now? Wow. Okay. So quite notable. You've done quite an amazing thing, and I'm sure your dad is your family super proud. So let's talk a little bit about legacy, Arthur,
Sure.
because I found that in this industry, particularly real estate, construction, and development, we tend to be multi-generational, right? As mentioned, this stuff runs through our veins. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we have been very fortunate. My dad started this company, Samet Corporation, April 1st, 1961. And I joined him full time in 1992. But he's still alive and is very proud of the organization and sits on our board as an advisor. but he was fantastic in giving people responsibility and authority to create. And so he was very entrepreneurial, but atypical of a founder, engineer, entrepreneurial guy. He gave everybody freedom to really create. And so that was the basis of what I witnessed and watched and got to experience also as I came into the business. And we kind of joked, but it wasn't really a joke. We'd ask for forgiveness, not permission. And so we'd take some calculated risk, and sometimes we'd make mistakes, and we'd talk about what we learned from them, and we didn't harp on that too long. We just moved on and got going on the next opportunity. And other times we created great success. And so he was fantastic in letting us do that within the business. I always joke that I was born on third base, and I wake up every morning having to prove I can hit a triple. So that's really the motivation and the driver of pushing the business and not settling with status quo, but really having a disruptive mindset of how are we going to evolve and how are we going to grow. And you talk about generational, as a family business, I also joke that it's numerators and denominators. And in a family business, the denominator, as people get older and grow and get involved in the business, the denominator's growing. I couldn't do anything about that. All I could do was focus on the numerator and scale it up and grow it.
Right. Well, that's neat. Well, when you talk a lot about, there's a lot of discussion in our industry about succession planning, right? So we'll talk about what's next later, but what's neat is that from that entrepreneurial standpoint, you've really built an interesting culture that I think is unique. So can you have 6 pillars. You've got some ideas in your mission and vision statement that I'd love for you to elaborate on, because obviously whatever you're doing, you've done it well. You've been noted as one of the best places to work in North Carolina amongst several years in a row, in addition to the honor as the Business CEO of the Year. So talk a little bit about the culture you've built.
Yeah. So as we started, I'll back up for a second and talk about what we really focused on in the organization was the difference between growth and scale, and how we were able to accomplish both at the same time. And growth is just bigger numbers, bigger projects. And what I would see in our industry is really talented folks, but they didn't build the business. They didn't build the chassis to support the speed and the weight of what we were doing. And that required building the infrastructure on the inside before you needed it, the systems and the processes, and not as a control mechanism, but to attract talent that we have the resources and we have the tools that they can execute the work, but they have time to think and be creative and entrepreneurial versus just do and react. And so we focused on scale within the organization, but we also, one of my early drivers when I was in the leadership role, and I had a key partner who's more operations minded than I am, Rick Davenport. I think you've met Rick.
Yeah.
He and I talked about it, and I said, I really want to focus on culture. And this was 15 years ago, probably longer, 20 years ago. And the key behind that culture was authenticity. And that's a really, really strong word for me. And we all spend time at work, our waking hours, we spend a lot more time with the people we work with than the people we choose to build a life with. And for me, I kind of joked around also that, look, if this doesn't work, I got the scarlet letter. Y'all can all go get a job, but I'm the damaged goods. Nobody's going to hire me. So let's make sure this thing works. And I wanted to build a culture that people wanted to be here. And they wanted to be a part of a team, felt like they made contributions, they were heard. It was open door policy, and not just we hear you, but we react as well. And I think we got that. I think we really attract we say we punch over our weight class. We've attracted just fantastic talent that have come from multinational organizations who say your technology platform's better, more useful. The culture here is great. It's the kind of place we want to be. And that's allowed us to scale the business up with the right talent.
Well, and that authenticity has led to loyalty, right? You've got a lot of folks that have been with you a long time. So that's kind of neat. You know, when we talk about luminaries, I always share with what inspired, how you inspired me with each person that we have as a guest. And I guess when somebody asks me about Arthur Samet, I say my best description is he walks softly, but carries a lot of weight and carries a lot of influence and has a big influence in the industry and the community, but in a gentle service oriented. I think you're probably one of those that I would say are, service focused in terms of, how can I help, right? And that kind of mentality. So,
Well,
and I
thank
know
you.
we've crossed paths through many, the work that we do across the Carolinas. There is oftentimes, when I go into a community, your footprint is there. You've either consulted, they've asked you to come in and help with something, or they've had you take a look at something, everywhere from Fletcher, North Carolina to Harnett County, and where I've been working. And every time I cross paths and they say, "Oh, Arthur Samet from the Samet Corporation helped," I went, "Is that right? How how usual?"
Well, it's interesting, we talked about knowing each other from 30 years ago, and the way we approach it, the way I approach it, it's a marathon. You may not get paid that day. It may not be immediate, but just be a net contributor, give back to the community, give back to the industry, and it comes
Yeah,
around, and
absolutely.
it builds upon itself. And
Yeah.
so I've been
That,
fortunate to be around folks like you and the different networks that I've been exposed to. And so I've learned, I always learn something when I get involved like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, we got a lot of great intellectual talent and great people in the Carolinas. And obviously, whatever you're doing and whatever the industry is doing it right, because everybody wants to be here, given the growth that we've seen in the Carolinas. So, talk about that a little bit, because you started in Greensboro, you're in the triad. Boy, we've all seen a lot of dramatic change, right, over the last 10 or 15 years. So what do you think is, what's been the biggest impact of all the accomplishments and the growth you've seen and the projects you've been involved with? What stands out for you?
Um, well, I think when I think about our organization and the growth, it's been able to attract that talent. But when we focused on Greensboro was a great industrial market, commercial
Mm,
market. We were really concentrated here. And so we believed we needed to expand and grow to provide opportunity to recruit better talent, to recruit new people in and see opportunities to run markets for us. And so my strategy was focus on concentric circles so we could
mm,
push out. So somebody may say, why do you have an office in Charlotte, Greensboro, and Raleigh? They're all so close together. But we really see it as local markets. And then we hire top talent to run that market. And we have RVPs in those markets that run their P&L and recruit and retain talent. And that allows us to work with the same customer in multiple markets. And we
mm.
focused on scalable customers also that, examples would be like an Amazon or a Grub Properties or different developers around the country, Chick-fil-A Supply building out their network. It's
Yeah.
really helped us build a business that's more sustainable. And so I think each market is fantastic. We have offices in Wilmington, Raleigh, Greensboro, Charlotte, Charleston, and Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
And each one has its nuances and has great opportunity. We have a lot of tailwinds just being in the Southeast. There are a lot of people who want
Absolutely.
to be here. So the multifamily,
Yeah.
the manufacturing, the distribution, the education, the healthcare. All of it allows us to take advantage of what we're good at doing and helping our customers grow there. And the other key component is us being able to control dirt the way we have in the past. That's been a great advantage for us as well. And we see just fantastic opportunity in the manufacturing and relocation of onshoring in this market.
Absolutely. Yeah. So onshoring is a big deal. But let's go back to the development companies because it's interesting. It used to be a pretty parochial, right? Where developers, you mentioned Grubb, everybody used to stay kind of in their own markets. But now we see people, to your point, they've done projects in Charlotte. Well, now they're in Raleigh or they're in Wilmington or whatever. So I think we've seen the development community realize with all the competition coming in from the outside, they've got to start growing and picking up and having some control in some of these other marketplaces. So what do you see in terms of the homegrown Carolina development companies that we all know versus the folks that are coming in from outside the region, like the Northeast and the West and Ohio Valley and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so that was part of our strategy when we went to Charleston, we went to Savannah, we're in Wilmington. We go to a somewhat smaller market that I call it the local mafia has been in control for a long time. And the momentum is building, values are increasing, whether it's a Southeast developer or somebody from out of the region that's coming in is looking for a higher level of service that allows us to come in and work with them and provide that high level of construction services, development services that they don't necessarily get in these smaller markets as they're in that growth mode. And so we see it as an arbitrage to get in there. A lot of times our existing Southeast developers drive us to those markets. And then we're able to grow within that market. So that's always been a good strategy for us. And I think everybody outside of the Smile States are looking in the Smile States to get into the market. And we're pretty careful on who we want to work with and how we want to work with folks. Depending on how well we know them or what their sophistication level is as well, coming into the markets.
Well, in North Carolina, we just saw the information released from the census, et cetera, is that we're the third fastest growing state in the nation now, behind Florida and Texas. So obviously, it's big opportunity, but some big challenges, right?
Sure.
So, and we take a look, at what's happened over the last 3 years. So between, the pandemic and COVID, I think you'd agree that many of us didn't see anything slowing down with the construction, even aside from the supply chain issues. And we talk a lot about talent, and recruiting talent. So what is your view, both from supply chain, talent attraction? What are you seeing, Arthur, and what do you think it looks like going forward?
Well, I would tell you North Carolina being the third fastest growing population-wise, there's been a lot of these mega deals like WxSpeed, like VinFast, like Boom, just in the triad market, and they're all over. That's going to consume a lot of the labor that's already restricted in the construction industry. And as we talk about inflation and supply chain, we're seeing some moderation within the supply chain. There's still pockets of challenges out there. But as it relates to inflation, the way I describe it is labor is 50% of a construction contract and or subcontracts are 90% of a construction contract, and 50% of that is labor, 50% is material, and then you take the manufacturing component of the material, and that's probably 50%. So wages I don't see wages coming back down. I don't see a big change in the cost of doing business in our future. I see better supply, better ability to get the materials, maybe a little bit of relief on pricing, but I think we're where we are on pricing. The labor component, we have had we were adjusting probably every 4 to 6 months on wages to make sure we were competitive, we were taking care of our folks, and they weren't going, they were getting 3 or 4 calls a day from recruiters. That's just the way it works. I think one of the challenges that we're going to have recruiting from outside of the area are interest rates on homes right now. The switching cost to come out of a home into a home in the Southeast has changed dramatically in the last 12 months. And I think that's going to put some constraints on recruiting talent from outside of the area. And you just have to be best in class in the area to have the best talent and be the provider of choice. And that gets back to our culture, gets back to how we operate the business, making sure that we are one of the top places to work so people want to be here with us and help us do what we do and provide an opportunity.
Well, and I think, housing affordability, we always bragged, right? The Carolinas were affordable. You could move here, but in every market that we're working in right now, whether it be market studies for, public sector, private sector projects, economic development work, it's, when you have average home prices in the 400,000s, that becomes a challenge. So housing affordability, I think, is going to be an important discussion for us all to have across the state. And then we look at markets where the cost of construction, right, back to your point about supply chain, has not far exceeds the market where the market rents are. So the markets haven't caught up yet to the actual costs for new construction. So what do you think that's going to do in terms of you're seeing activity speculatively versus build to suit? Because I can't imagine where, many developers are able to without a tenant at hand. It's like we're going to go back to the old days where you have to be 50% pre-leased in order to make the numbers work. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the housing affordability, we're still more affordable than the Northeast and the West Coast, but going from a 2.5% interest rate in your existing home versus going to a 6% interest rate,
right,
crushes that delta. As far as speculative development, I would say on the industrial side, that spigot has shut off. We've seen projects, not our projects, but we have seen projects that have stopped mid-construction from institutional owners. Like they just stopped. We've seen some forward sales not close and walk away from substantial deposits. And that's just a function of the lending environment and the cost of capital. And so where 75-80% loan to cost was pretty easily achievable, with the higher interest rates and the construction costs, you're now in the 60-65%, and the yields on the current cap rates are just really challenging. So I think speculative development is going to slow down. A lot of land deals have just screeched to a halt. The multifamily, we're seeing.
What do you think about that? Do you think that we talk about how we have such a housing crisis, but we've really built a lot of multifamily product, and not everybody's a renter. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the higher interest rates for single family is going to help that. I think the cost of construction is going to help that. The challenges in the capital markets and being able to clear the development pipelines, the construction loans are slowing down the banks lending on new, but like through Comet, we're able to get similar term sheets that we had prior to the last 6-12 months. And so I think you're going to continue to see multifamily development, not at the pace we saw it before, but we're going to continue to see new product. And I think it's needed out there, honestly.
You don't think it's overbuilt at this point yet? Obviously, it depends on the local market.
Yeah, I think in certain pockets you're going to see that, but Charlotte is still, one of the top markets to move to, and young professionals. The Raleigh-Durham market, the folks that are building and investing in there, the type of projects that we're building, they view that as the next Austin, Nashville submarket or market, and we're building 17-story multifamily. We're building 27-story multifamily. Like, the whole market is evolving as a much more mature market.
Wow. Yeah. The heights we haven't seen.
Exactly.
Starting to feel pretty urban, isn't it, in some areas?
Yeah. We're seeing a lot of the municipal work, the education, all that service needs to be provided to all the headcount that's coming in.
Yeah.
And the healthcare MOB market seems to be relatively healthy for us as well.
Well, and it'll be interesting to watch. The consolidation continues with some of these mergers in the healthcare industry. So, well, we could just go on for hours, I know, and talk about all this stuff. But, what does it look like? What's next for you? What's next for Arthur Samet and the Samet Corporation? And, what do you think is going to be going on in the next few years?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think we're going to have our challenges in 2023 that we talked about. Financing's going to be trickier. The capital markets are going to be slower. But I think we're in a great place that's going to outperform for being in the Southeast. Samet and our businesses will continue to look at the Southeast and continue that concentric circle growth and push out further from our current markets. That way we can borrow resources and leverage brand and help subcontractors grow with us. I think one of my key components that I'm focused on is succession planning. I'm 53 and now I'm the old guy in the room.
Oh, you're young still, 53. I still have a few years on you.
In our organization, I'm getting to be the old guy, and just building out that next leadership team that can handle the scale of the organization that we're at. And my dad was a great mentor that allowed us to take it from the size organization it was then to what it is today. And I think the key is having that great talent and not being vulnerable or feeling vulnerable that you're hiring people better at doing what you do, and allowing the company, putting the company first, putting the associates first, and the ownership, the shareholders, the family will be fine. If we take care of people, they'll take care of us.
Yeah. Well, continue that culture and that legacy that you've built, Arthur. It's you've done a fantastic job, and kudos to you. I'm just so proud of you and proud to call you my friend, and we can't wait to see what's next. So I appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to having our next conversation in the next quarter, and we will be back with everybody again soon. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation. I enjoyed it. It's great seeing you.
Thank you.
Take care.